So this is our psychology and advertising assignment by Mary Sullivan and Ruth Kettler. Our general topic, the article we chose from the textbook concerns learning, specifically the subject of classical conditioning. So the article describes Ivan Pavlov's experiments, and that is what we looked at. So the title of the article that we chose from the textbook is The Classical Origins of Pavlov's Conditioning, and the author of this article is Robert E. Clark, and the reference of the article is Veterans Affairs Medical Center. So the background information on this article is that it represents a brief description of the scientific discovery of classical conditioning, both in the United States and in Russia. So there's a lot of particular attention in this article is given to how and why the terminology is used to identify the components of classical conditioning and how learned behavior is looked at and how it is modified over the years. So the terminology that was given to classical conditioning can be traced back to Ivan Pavlov's experiments. He was really the main guy who looked at classical conditioning. So for the hypothesis, the classical conditioning hypothesis states that if a neutral stimulus produces a response after being paired with a stimulus, then it naturally produces a response. So for the methods and results, to test classical conditioning theory, Pavlov created an experiment using dogs and their responses to meat powder. So Pavlov tested this theory by using dogs to administer the food and to measure the salivatory responses. When the dogs were initially presented with a plate of food, they began to salivate. Pavlov called this presentation of food an unconditioned stimulus, something that reliably produces a natural occurring reaction in an organism. He called the dog's salivation an unconditioned response, a reflective reaction that is reliably produced by an unconditioned stimulus. So from this, Pavlov soon discovered that he could make the dog salivate to neutral stimuli, such as things that don't usually make an animal salivate, such as the ringing of the bell or the sound of a bell. Pavlov paired this presentation of food with the sound of a bell, which, sure enough, he found that dogs salivated to these sounds. This is known as a conditioned stimulus, or like the learned behavior from it. Dogs do not usually salivate to the sound of a bell, but when it is paired with food, the animal will learn to associate the sound of the bell and learn to salivate. This is called a conditioned response. So this is just more on the methods. And so food is the unconditioned stimulus, salivation is the unconditioned response, conditioned stimulus is the turning fork, and salivation is the conditioned response. So the conditioned response are learned, not natural or reflexive behavior. So in conclusion, Pavlov immediately recognized the significance of these findings, finding that would ultimately lead him to change the direction of his research to explore the classical conditioning phenomenon more. The results of Pavlov's experiments with dogs showed that responses can be learned, shown that the dog salivating whenever the bell rang.
So advertisement number 1, we did a Corona Extra ad for beer. The advertisement depicts 2 beers on the beach with a relaxed girl swinging on a hammock. So analysis, the ad appears to be using a classical conditioning technique, as we learned through the advertisement to be relaxed when drinking the Corona. This is a conditioned response because it wants you to think about being at the beach whenever you drink a beer, so being super relaxed. To test our analysis, we could change the advertisement by taking away the beach and the hammock and the sense of relaxation that the beer presents. Instead, you could put the beer in a work environment and see the different results. It would be way more stressful. Classical conditioning is very effective in this advertisement as the 2 scenes evoke different emotions, and most people prefer the beach over the workplace.
In advertisement 2, so the Pepsi advertisement of their new size can called the Skinny Can depicts a pretty skinny and young model drinking the Pepsi. So our analysis on it was that the advertisement uses classical conditioning by making the viewer associate drinking Pepsi with being beautiful and skinny. So when you drink the new Skinny Can, you are conditioned to believe that you will look like her. And then we thought about how this advertisement could be changed to test our analysis. by changing the person drinking the Pepsi in the advertisement. So if the advertisement showed someone not skinny or not as beautiful as her, they might change their mind. It might change their mind or view about Pepsi and the mind of the consumers. So the classical conditioning is very affected in this advertisement, as it makes the viewers learn to think Pepsi will make you appear like the model.